I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant, and this is the Pharma Prescribed podcast, where leaders, innovators, and hidden voices in healthcare open up. No sound bites, no spin, just raw insight, one prescription at a time. In an industry driven by data, protocols, and pressure, we rarely pause to ask the human questions. What drives us? What breaks us? And what truths live behind the titles we wear? Andreas Beust is CEO and Managing Director of GCP Service International, a Bremen-based contract research organization supporting clinical research across medicinal products, medical devices, and in vitro diagnostics. He also serves as President of the Association of International CROs and acts as guest lecturer at the University of Bremen. His journey in clinical research is closely tied to the growth of GCP Service, having joined the company right before its regional expansion into a more internationally active organization. From starting in the biostats department to taking on the CEO position, Andreas has helped shape studies not only as regulatory exercises, but as projects that need to work for patients, sites, sponsors, and research teams alike. Andreas brings a perspective shaped by experience, the desire to find creative solutions to complex problems, and a strong belief that clinical research only works when it's both scientifically robust and operationally realistic. Andreas, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Pharma Prescribed today. For those of our audience who are not familiar with you, who are you and what is the mission you're on?
At the end of the day, I think I would describe myself as an enthusiast for clinical research. I love what I'm doing. I love that I get to work in a space that is so closely tied to the health of myself, my relatives, my friends, and all of us in a very scientific role, in a job that is exciting and new every day. I think my role in that sphere is to try to make all of that, which is quite complex and really hard to get to from the outside. If you're not a person in the system, it's really hard to understand how the gears are moving, to make all of that more accessible. That is really what I try to do more, and it ties quite a lot to my own sort of like stumbling by accident into the industry, which I think it's the same for a lot of people. Then discovering a realm that is so impactful, so important, yet so rarely well understood, that I feel we need to share more of that. It needs to be a bit more communal. We need to pull back the curtain a bit more. And for that reason, I also really appreciate the opportunity to be here and have a chat with you about the space, what we are doing, and make it more accessible to the people that are interested in learning more about clinical research, what it takes to get into the industry, or how it is working in it. So thank you very much for the opportunity and hosting me here today.
Not at all. As someone I've known for a little while, I've followed your career with interest, Andreas, and some years ago we spoke, I think early doors when you'd just taken on the CEO role at GCP International. For our audience who are not familiar with you, how on earth did a guy that was sat on the biostats desk doing the reporting of the clinical studies end up being the CEO?
It's hard to explain. I think, so it's a lot of saying yes to basically everything. There's an asterisk to whether I would recommend that or not. It's a tremendous level of luck. It is, I guess, a little bit of persistence. And at the end of the day, a great opportunity provided by a really inspiring leader, which is the founder of our company, another Andreas, who founded the company and decided, even though it's not the typical 75 years, let's now start thinking about who will take on the helm because I'm too old story. I'm not even 50 and I'm looking for a person that can succeed me because clinical research is very dynamic. We are shifting much more into a data-driven perspective for managing the clinical trials, not the historically predominant, let's say, cleanups driven, heavy monitoring, heavy source data verification, which I think a lot of the CROs originated from, but rather we need more data-driven perspectives. Having the guts to say on late 40, you know what, 18 years is good enough, someone else can take on the helm. And then awarding that opportunity, giving a chance for me to make the mistakes, learn on my own, but really being given a lot of liberty to take the company forward, not putting me in a role where I'm technically a puppet, but I'm doing what another person is doing, just a new face, but really saying that, no, now it's yours, do with it as you see fit. That, I think, really takes a very visionary visionary approach to say that this is how it should be and let's do it at an early stage. Since I think Andreas Grund had that mindset very early on, this is how he was looking at the people that were joining the company. This awarded me the opportunity to even get into this position. What got me there was I got to engage with clients early on because biostats tends to do that. Sample size is very important at the beginning of the study. I think I had an aptitude for picking up what our clients really wanted, understanding that and translating it to something actionable for them. As my role as a statistician, who usually have a tendency to overcomplicate matters and throw in a lot of technicalities that are not really relevant for decision makers. But due to my slightly unusual path, I think I had an opportunity and an ability to communicate the things that were important for decision making. I believe that Andreas saw that in me and said, if he can do that in this position, let's give him more responsibilities. And did the same with Thomas, who was my boss and supervised the biostats and data management team and is now my colleague and co-managing director. So I think they really gave me an opportunity, put me into situations where I could use it so that they could see, hey, okay, there is this potential. He can consult early. Then the opportunity presented itself. And I said yes one more time to another challenge. And yeah, very happy that I made the decision, but also very grateful that I got this opportunity to begin with.
It's a lovely way of framing that, actually, around those actionable insights. The communication skills that you describe are quite rare, I would say, also in this realm of my experience of coming alongside and having worked alongside many biostatisticians and very technical people. Those that can communicate generally tend to stand out.
Yeah.
I think that comes from a personality and a warmth, but also, as you say, working from a CRO's point of view, it's always about providing a service, isn't it? It's about what can you do? How can we provide you with that solution? And how do we best get our arms around you, retain you for the longer term, give you confidence that we understand what we're talking about and translate that into this is what it will play out for those studies. So I think it's a really nice way of framing that, as I say. I think you're being very kind and very generous to the opportunity that was afforded to you as well, because clearly there's something in you. The last time we spoke, I think I said to you, you're unusual because without bringing age into it, you're very young and you're very dynamic, and your style and your behavior around that style and the language in which you use is impeccable. And I want to credit you with that because it really does stand out. How you translated that more recently, I came across some podcasts that you've been recording recently, and I've now seen you sat in the podcasting chair. You're on the reverse of that now today for me, but I'd love to know what skills you think translate well to a podcast.
At the end of the day, I think one of the driving factors for me and why I love so much what I'm doing is curiosity. Every day for me is different. This is really within a podcast setting where you have a diverse of people that you can talk to, and they are basically giving you, let's say, a compressed life lesson of their perspective, their background, and the way that they see and interpret things day to day in their lives, how they make decisions. This is such a catalyst for growth and this perspective, and having an opportunity to listen first is exactly the same thing that I need to do in my day-to-day job. I think this is what consultants sometimes get wrong. It's a desire to find an opportunity to say something and represent your own knowledge. But the most important skill that you should have is listen first and understand what the problem is on the other side. Because otherwise, whatever you're saying may or may not coincide with what the client needs. In a podcast, it's all about listening and taking that in and understanding the perspective of the person on the other side. So I think the skills there coincide quite well. And I just love that I get to use that as a platform to then also take in all of those life lessons from my guests, which I really cherish, and bring a completely different dynamic and picture in that is beyond our typical interactions that I have with clients or business partners.
I couldn't have said that better myself. That's been exactly my experience as well. And we're near on 50 episodes now. Each time I'm so grateful for the opportunity, including today, because as you say, these are those kind of water cooler conversations that are over and above and beyond what you would ever expect when people are passing you by at a conference. They remember the conversation, they remember the interaction, And hopefully one day down the line, they come back to you with an opportunity because of the way you made them feel. It's clear to me that you really are touching on so many different aspects of that as well. As a smart CEO who's putting himself in the shop window of discomfort. That's the point, isn't it? It's not comfortable to do these things, but we're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah.
Not many people are doing it, are they?
No. You're right. It is more comfortable to stick to things that you know you can do well, but in that zone, you are not. So the main driver for growth is discomfort, that friction that happens when you develop new skills in the unknown. That's the really important piece. And for that reason, feedback is a key component to growth. Reflection is a key component to growth, but also the continuous exposure to new things and going outside of your comfort zone. While I tremendously enjoy all of the conversations, the start is always nerve-wracking. It's the first few sentences. How is it flowing? Where are we going? Is this enjoyable for the person that's coming in? Because they donate a lot of time. Of course, you want to make it comfortable for them and a fun experience as well. Since they're already sharing like their side of the things, this is what, as a host, you're supposed to do and you want to do. So once that gels in and then it's a comfort zone, then I can really enjoy it. But the first few sentences are always, okay, will everything work out well? Then this fades away as it's too interesting to have nice conversations with great people.
Botham, I couldn't agree with you more. I always find when I'm listening back and when we're editing these podcasts that there is a sweet spot, and it usually comes between that 5 and 10 minute period when people just calm down and they forget they're being recorded and it just flows.
Exactly.
It just flows.
Yeah.
So now we're in that zone, Andreas.
Yeah.
We can recognize that and say, good, well done. So from a personal perspective, I'm fascinated to know how you got into stats, your background, what led you into that long before. Was there a personal story that drove you into clinical research? Did you stumble across it? What brought you here?
So the way that I got into clinical research is strongly tied to my bachelor studies. I got to know a friend of mine, Sergey Graf. He's still head of project management here at GCP Service, and we studied biology together. We had a very close friendship throughout our studies, still maintain that to date. So as I started my PhD, he finished his master's in neurobiology and he started as a CRA here at GCP Service, then became a data manager and then became a project manager. So he had experience in a couple of different spaces within the company as well. We kept in close touch, and it was clear for me after my PhD in molecular microbiology that I wanted to move from the lab to more applied science, more of industry, both for personal reasons, because this is more compatible with, let's say, a stable family life. My wife is a psychotherapist, so she cannot move all the time. If you're staying in science, you basically have to move cities and universities in quite a high cadence. And I didn't want to make that a key. This wasn't going to be compatible with our living requirements and having a relationship with my wife. So that decision was quite clear, but also I wanted something that's a little bit more applied. It's a lot of the research done in universities stays in drawers, in PhD thesis, and maybe in a publication, yes, but what's the real life application of that afterwards? I think especially in Germany, that's something that we see a lot, or let's say in Europe more. I think the US is a bit better there in translating that over to actual science. So I decided, hey, let's move on. Let's go to the industry. I shared those thoughts and topics, and of course I applied for different pharma companies. Can I work in the lab and whatnot? And this all didn't quite align. Because again, they wanted more practical experiences, or they hire you as someone that they need to train from the ground up, which sort of felt like a little bit of a waste. He said, you know what? We work so closely together in our studies. I know that you will do well here in this company. It's a great team. Why don't you apply here? Yeah. 2 days later, he told me that his boss had asked him why I hadn't sent my CV yet. I didn't know for which position I was going to apply. But I just said, okay, let's discuss once. It was a data management position, so I applied. During the interview, that boss asked me, how are you with numbers? I would say we have changed our recruitment process quite significantly since then, and I wouldn't hire myself anymore, but apparently it worked out. So how did numbers and stats tie into that? In deciding for I studied, the choice was between math and biology, because I had math as an intensive course in school. I really enjoyed it. I did some tutoring in it as well. So I always had a fascination for it. I employed quite some statistical methods during my PhD thesis as well. Basic ones, from what I now know in terms of all of my experience gained within the clinical trials, but nevertheless. So I said, okay, sure, I can also do a part-time role and say, maybe I can support the stats team and statistical programming, because the stats is already defined. It's just about executing, and I'm sure I can pick up programming and SAS without a problem. So this is how I started out, but there was such a high need in the biostats team because the one person that was mentoring me from a statistical side had a baby, and then of course they needed some more support in that team as well. So I just jumped in. I started just analyzing studies because the SAP was already written, and this is how I got into the biostats role. And I picked things up quite fast, and they understood that, contrary to my mentor, I did enjoy the challenge of going into early consultations with clients and communicating with them also. So I was basically prepared by them. He said, like, next to me in case there were any questions I couldn't answer, but prepared all of the, like, this is what you should consider and this and that. So within 3 months, I was starting to consult clients from a statistical point of view as well. Then, yeah, 50, 60, 70 studies as a statistician later, with a lot of self-learned things. There's a lot of repetition in what we do and what we apply because it meets regulatory expectations. You can say others have done it before. And so this lowers the burden of having to have long discussions with regulators first if you want to try something very extraordinary. It basically meant that I could consult on quite a breadth of things, always supported by people with the formal statistics role in the background. Then took on some teams, departments of different times, medical writing, because it was quite close to scientific writing that I had done before, and protocols, CSRs. I managed one study as a project manager, as a jumping board for managing teams, becoming a team lead, and then took on one team, then the second team, and then 4 years had passed, and I was asked if I can become the CEO, and had a 1-year transition period, basically. So everything went super fast.
What can I say? That's extraordinary, Andreas. We do have a lot of young listeners, postgrads and undergrads in life sciences. Again, this was one of the reasons why I set up this podcast, was really just to show them what is possible. Not just the students at my alumni, but students who are interested in coming into this industry. And I think that insight is just incredibly powerful. I think what you're describing is really try it, see how good you are at it, and then just keep going and just keep pushing and pushing. Clearly, with a PhD, you're not bad at a lot of things, I would imagine, and you're very humble around maths. I like numbers. I was a maths tutor. Okay, I like numbers, but I wasn't a maths tutor, and I wasn't enormously proud of my maths capabilities, but I have plenty of people alongside me who could make me look better. I'm not a statistician. I think that is just a wonderful insight into how you can get into this industry effectively. You can come into this industry with lots of different skills, complementary skills, and things that will differentiate you, but supplant you within a very high performing project team very quickly, right?
Yes. I make it a point these days to invite once a year, in collaboration with the university. My old university professor always reaches out and say, please invite all of your students also over. They have now a part of the curriculum is that they go and visit different companies. I said, you are always welcome here. They always show up here as well. So I can tell them we have a lot of natural science people, even in our team, and I have all of them showcase how they entered. Everyone that was at the university in Bremen that is now working here at the company, showcase how they entered here, what they do, and then really tell them these are entry-level jobs. This is what you can do. These are additional qualifications you can get. Sometimes there's like some institutes that offer something for like monitoring or data management, which you can do. But there are data management, monitoring, document management, even regulatory affairs. I think these are jobs where companies have a chance to give you a shot and allow for you to be trained from the ground up, even if you don't have prior experience. And that's something that not every company really picks up and really awards to the people. But there's, I think, mid-sized company range where they're large enough so that they can really train these people well, but they're not so large that they will only hire like the really experienced people because somehow that's what they want to do. In that sweet spot, I think you can find companies that allow you the first step. And then it's really just, as you said, you learn with the team, and from there on, you're in the system. And then it doesn't matter where you came from before. The only thing that matters is, oh, you've been in the industry for 2-3 years. You're super interesting for a lot of companies. So the first step is the hard one. I'm not going to gloss over that. That's going to be really tough to get in, but it's super worthwhile attempting. To push through is something that you would have to do. think about the regulatory requirements that we are meeting, try to learn as much about it as possible, I think, to set yourself up. And then the rest is just stay vigilant mentally, because the problems will be quite different in nature that you are facing. Showcase that, showcase your eagerness, and you'll stick out. And then fingers crossed. This is how you can get in the industry. It's not very easy, but it's manageable. There are many cases that we can highlight to, and we need more people that are really enthusiastic about it. So go ahead and give it a try.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And on that point about bringing in new, young, enthusiastic talent, that's the way to backfill and build an organization with strong infrastructure, isn't it? You train them through doing, you see what they're good at, you push them down that route, or whatever they show a passion and a drive and energy around. It's really insightful, your experiences, because, dare I say it, they so closely align with so many people who I have employed into this industry as well. Those really special people shine. Like yourself, when you show willingness and capability, there is something that stands out, not just for the managers of those people, but actually there's just such a high turnover of staff generally that the cream does rise to the top, does it not?
Yeah, definitely it does. It's really attitude. We hire for attitude first, always. Even with statistician, in the first interview, and I still lead quite a lot of interviews there, I don't ask them what type of statistics have you learned or applied or whatnot. It's secondary for me, because if I don't have the right mindset on the other side, it doesn't matter how technically skilled they are. They'll not match with our team. They will not match with the level of, let's say, service provider mentality that we needed to have as a service provider as well. Because at the end of the day, you need to want to understand the person on the other side. You need to have a drive and enthusiasm that we want to showcase also towards our client, that we make their project our own. If that's not you, it's not going to work. So this is what I always hire first. If you show up with that, this is all that I need to make that call. I have a lovely story, because we hired someone, is it a year now? For sure, it has to be a year or so ago, that reached out to me from the university just on LinkedIn, sent me a message and said, hey, Andreas, I would love to learn a little bit more about clinical research. Not about I want to apply for a job or something else. I said, okay, we can have a meeting there. The meeting was so goddamn structured. It was so nice. She said, okay, this is the questions that I all have, super well prepared. And she was, okay, we have 15 minutes left. We have 10 minutes left. And so I'm sorry, but we're out of time. So I'm happy to end it here. I said, I'm fine. We can keep going. Such a nice display of structured, organized behavior. And so I reached out afterwards to 3-4 team leads and I said, if we don't have a position, we make a position. If we meet someone with that mindset, we need to hire that person. She is doing a fantastic job for us now. I'm sure she is gonna move into other positions in our company as well and move forward. I love it when people come, are real, and you can feel that they have done the homework, that they are interested, and this already sets you apart from the vast majority of people that are applying for these positions. Frankly speaking, we get so much AI applications where the people don't even know what we are doing, what the position is or whatnot. So no one spends any time on reviewing any of that. But if you have a person that really takes the time, you can feel it in the initial outreach to a job posting, in the first interview that you have with a person, or even the first discussion. This already differentiates you well, and then people also give you a chance, for sure.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example. Hiring for attitude. That's what I heard, and that's what I'll play back to you, because you're clearly doing that. But I think also you've seen the value, and you're seeing the value of doing that. And that is just a phenomenal example. Why do you think that does differentiate people when they show up as themselves? What is it that's different?
Yeah. So since we also have quite a mix of experienced and less experienced people, so across the range, what I always feel is a better predictor of whether an outcome meets my expectation for me is the mindset with which the task is approached. The biggest problem I have in people and people management is, as a manager, is a large part, of course, also what I'm doing, although I have other people that support me with that, is taking on responsibility for your own work and not treating it as another to-do to be ticked off the list. That's for me the biggest differentiator that I see in my satisfaction, but also consequently in our client satisfaction with the work that's being done. I am always surprised when I see that we have a misalignment on that dedication, on taking responsibility and not having a responsibility diffusion as we're continuing to grow. That is unfortunately going to happen a bit more and more. That's just natural. You have less of that when you're a company of 10 people than when you're 100 people or 10,000 people. For that reason, attitude is so important. You can see that not in the tales of the things that the people have done in the past, but in the attitude that they have towards life and towards what's important for them. So one of the key questions we always ask is, what do you burn for? What gives you drive? What is really getting you energetic and enthusiastic? That tells me a lot of whether that's something that can translate over into what they're going to do on a day-to-day basis. And that's really more of the focus of the initial discussions. If there's nothing, that's fine. I don't expect that 100% of the people go after a job because they feel this is the fulfillment in life. I love it when I see people that are enthusiastic for what they do, because frankly speaking, we spend too much time at a job for just the paycheck. So I think we should all look for something that gives us that fulfillment. And it's my job as an employer and us as a company to give our people all the opportunities that we can to put them into positions where they can do things that they really love. So therefore, we also move people from position to position if we think that's better or they think that's better. But ultimately, there are some people that would just say, no, I'm fine living a relaxed, normal life. That's also okay. But then this works in certain positions, but it doesn't work in others. It works only when responsibility is taken by other people, not by these people. Our team is too small to have a lot of those people yet. A lot of people carry a lot of responsibility in the way that we set up our processes, our teams, our reporting, and so on. We don't want super tight controlled processes for everything that nail it down, make us slow and less flexible. So we want flexibility for us, one of our clients. So we need that in the mindsets of the people as well. This really shines and shows in those, let's say, non-hard skill, if you want to call it that, conversations that you can have.
That's such a refreshing lens with which to hear that. If I can answer that question myself, what do you burn for? I burn for learning new skills, doing new things, and always pushing outside of the comfort zone. I don't know how that plays back to you, but I sense that we are quite similar in that respect, because there was a reason many years ago that we connected, because I saw an energy and a drive and a determination in you that is only reinforced by having this conversation with you today. It's so valuable to hear you say that, Andreas, as a leader in an organization where you can actually impart that in the recruitment, in the development, and in the further development of those people through your organization. I'm sure they're incredibly happy to hear you say that when this plays back to them.
I hope so.
I'd love to just move on, if you wouldn't mind, with talking about some of the roles that you're also performing. So outside of the company, you're also the president of the Association of the International CROs. What does that entail, and how does that translate into all the activities that you're performing with GCP International?
As a small, at the time, CRO, one of the big drawbacks is that you need to work with a lot of companies to support you in regions that you don't cover. Because clinical research is very international, you should go where the patients are or where strategically it makes most sense for the trial to be conducted, never just where you are. That has always been a foundational principle for how we consult on the feasibility of trials. We should go to the regions, not that we cover, but that make most sense for our clients. To provide reassurance that we can indeed, even at our size, cover the globe, we needed a distinct solution that would allow for long-term stability in and long-term opportunity for covering other regions without growing too much ourselves. The moment we want to cover the globe, we will lose flexibility, we will get too expensive, and we cannot serve the clients that we feel benefit most from our mindset and our approach to clinical research, which is mostly in the small to mid-sized range, or larger companies that need flexible solutions to their clinical trials. As such, 2013, GCP Service co-founded with one other member that's also now GCP Service, our Czech colleagues, former leading clinical research, ACROS, which has since grown to 10 different companies from the US to Europe, Middle East, Africa, India, China, Australia, covering the globe, but with a similar size, a similar mindset, and in true collaboration fashion. And that's different to working with another company out there because you're always in competition and it's for one project and then we will see afterwards. What we are doing here is we're saying we take another partner, and the moment they join the association, that country is off limit for other companies to expand into. We run 20 studies concurrently in Spain, Italy, and Portugal, for example. We have a partner there that does that for us. Fiscally, for us as a company, it would make sense to simply open an office and run this under GCP Service umbrella. Would make much more sense. But that's not the spirit. We have a partner there that we can trust, who we have worked with for a decade, who we have worked with in 30, 40, 50 trials. So we rather grow together with that alliance. And this is the foundational thought. So my job as a president is to seek out and coordinate these companies in a representative function. So we meet once a quarter with all the managing directors of the companies, remote, once a year also in person, to really find close relationships so that these are truly partners that I can very easily reach out to, that really support me as an extension of our own team, but without the need for us to grow and develop structures that support such a very international setup. It gives us the flexibility, but at the same time, we know within a few days, if we need help, we have help. They're qualified. We're working according to the same processes. There is a foundational quality management system there that ensures we are all aligned, despite all of the diversity that we have in that group, to the same minimum standards. That really shows me I know reliably I can run clinical trials globally. That's what ACROS does. It's quite a unique model. And it's a lot about partnership mindset. So that's a recurring theme here as well. Yeah, when I took on the CEO position at GCP Service, there was also an election. I tossed my hat into the ring to be elected as president. I was elected. This year is re-election time. So we are heading to China in October. I will throw my head in there as well. I've gotten positive feedback so far that probably, hopefully, there is a good chance of being re-elected and continue driving that growth, because this aligns with making clinical trials accessible. That's also for sponsors. They should have an opportunity to run clinical trials globally without having to go to a global company for whom they are too small, that is too expensive, and has too rigid processes that cannot really align to smaller project scales. To represent an opportunity for something to change, we need to and want to drive that association. For that reason, we put a lot of effort and enthusiasm also in it. We have 3 members of GCP Service donating time there, our head of quality assurance, our vendor manager as also vice president in the association, or vice president for finances, and myself, plus some people from our BD team as well, really put in some effort there to cover the globe. That's one of the roles that I do, and it awards me a look into international clinical trial conduct that I really cherish.
That's a really impressive example of, again, pushing the envelope as to what's possible. So rather than growing to, let's say, one of the top tier CROs, you're effectively engaging with different regions and areas through trusted partners, through those shared quality management systems. For anyone that's listening or following this, how do they become a member of those trusted partners? How do you get into that club? Because it sounds like a club that many small to medium CROs would want to be members of, right?
Yeah, it is. The map is getting smaller. There are not so many companies there that really align with that mindset, because as you join, so we have had partners before that left, or that we said we don't want to join because the clear ambition was we want to be global. And that just simply doesn't align with the ACROS mindset. It means that if there is recurrent business with one of the ACROS partners that you have in there, your ambition will drive you to open up your own office in that region. And that's not what we're here for, because in that sort of growth direction that you're taking, invariably, you will need to put bottom line first. You will want to get external investors in to support your inorganic growth. And that means the vision that you are following is driven away from the collaborative spirit that we have in ACROS. So these has to be companies that sort of have a stable outlook on where they are located. It's fine if they want to grow. This is not a problem, but that cannot be their primary ambition. This is a mindset that I need to see in other people. So if anyone is interested, you can always reach out to me, ideally on LinkedIn, because we get a bunch of too much spam to sift through all of that, and mostly it is ineffective. If you feel like that's something, reach out via LinkedIn, send me a message. always happy to have a chat and explore whether we are already covering a certain region or we don't cover it. If we already cover it, that's it. We only have one member per region. If we don't cover it yet, let's have a conversation. And then let's see if mindset, vision aligns, and if you can get behind what we want to build with ACROS.
I think that's really helpful. Thank you for explaining that, because,
Sure,
as I say, it's pretty unique in our business that companies are not driven by shareholder value and everything around monetary value. Like you said, the fiscal exchange is really different. It's a different business model. I want to applaud not just GCP International, but all the other companies that I will probably look up to see how they're working. It sounds more like a communal approach to sharing, delegating value, delegating skills across the globe.
Yeah. At the end of the day, so GCP Service has tremendously and like also fiscally profited from ACROS because we can conduct with a higher level of security, larger clinical trials, which means there's also more work for us because we win studies we would have otherwise not won, or we participate in trials that other members run where we can support them locally within our region. So supporting the association directly supports our growth without I need to take everything for myself attitude. This is the differentiating factor. So you have to play a bit more of a long-term strategic game, but at the end of the day, you gain these valuable partnerships, and this awards us also an insight and experience from all of our other partners because they have their own audits, they have their own projects, and they've shared their findings, our quality and like lessons learned and observations and regulatory changes and whatnot, client demands. Our quality assurance teams also meet on a regular basis across the globe, and they simply exchange what's happening, what are we succeeding in, what are we struggling with, what are our clients demanding, what questions are inspectors raising. This is information we would never get if we were doing that all on our own because they all have their own projects plus the projects together in the association. That's if you understand that this communal growth doesn't mean you grow slower alone, then you understood the ACROS concept.
Yeah, I think that's the lens that you just reinforced there again, which is just the value of many rather than the power of one. Thank you for that. It would be remiss, Andreas, at this point, if I didn't ask you something about how GCP International is bringing in tools around artificial intelligence, because it comes into so many of the conversations that I've had on the podcast. I don't want it all to be around that, but being a technical guy like I know you are, someone who loves maths, and you're all in the detail, tell me, what are you doing in and around this space at the moment?
Yeah, the first premise that I would set is, I think at the moment in this space, there's a lot of overpromise, underdeliver. We look at a lot of different tools because a lot of software simply sprout. It's so easy these days to produce something new, a software, a tool that can assist in any of the clinical trial activities that you do. That I think it's very enticing for companies to simply say, let's give it just a shot. Everyone is promising the moon. Then you have to say, okay, but where does it really support us? How can we integrate it? And what's the regulatory compliance side of things? And we have found few members of that growing group of software providers that have at least the foundations right and might be able to support, as we roll them out more and more, our clinical trial activities also more. And I think the two areas that probably benefit quite a bit is one, any like writing associated tasks, because here, simply because this is also how I think it became widely spread, LLMs can quite support in more mundane tasks, and that sort of makes consistency checks easier and more repetitive tasks a bit easier. So our experts can focus then on the details and on the storytelling element on the medical writing side. The other side is programming also benefits from artificial intelligence. Here, admittedly, we are not as far progressed as I would like to see, but we are moving forward in using artificial intelligence to make that happen. And besides that, it helps in logistics. So we have all like Microsoft 365 Copilot integrations that helps in like aggregating information much more readily if it has access to your files, and you can embed that a little bit more easily into your workflow. These are smaller gains that you see here along the pathway. And we have recently started a pilot in which we wanted to make all of our lessons learned a little bit more accessible and make it easier for our employees to record them as well. This is also AI guided, such a way that you have different means like voice, emails, and so on that you can throw in there. It extracts the relevant information, lets you then cross-check, human in the loop approach the information, and structures it in a way that's also easier to query afterwards. Because otherwise, the typical format is you have a table and then you have very specific information you need to put in there. And the moment there's a typo in there, it's not easy to find it anymore. The category might simply be wrong. And so making recording and retrieving information easier, that's also something that artificial intelligence can help with and grow like a knowledge base. A lot of what we are seeing, I think, but I don't want to get too technical, is in the space of, is it machine learning? Is it artificial intelligence? So the self-learning expert part of it might not be there to that extent. So I use the term AI loosely. I just want to make sure that's out there. But this is how I think generally it is interpreted and how it's also advertised by a lot of companies. So moving forward, always looking for opportunities to make it happen. Since we employ a lot of software on our end as well, really looking forward to what we can still do. But overall, I would say realistically, the actual benefit within the clinical trial currently behind what is being portrayed as possible, or behind I don't know, $250,000 per year per person license fee and whatnot, which is completely impossible for any small to mid-sized company to pay.
Thank you for that. Again, that rich insight that you provide, because for a company of your size, you kind of reinforced what I thought. Having been to several AI and clinical research conferences over the past few months, I've seen some extraordinary things. And the point that you made around that $250,000 license fee per head is exactly what I saw. And of course, I saw incredible things for that kind of value. Yes. I would expect to when I'm paying the earth.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that when you're in the trenches and you're doing the day-to-day, there are clearly things that are alongside that are going to make us smarter, faster, and more agile. You came back to that point, which has been mentioned so many times now, which is the human in the loop. There will never be a role that doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, in clinical trials and good clinical practice, involve the human in the loop. That's something that auditors have reinforced at every single conference. The other point that they've all made is you can call it AI, you can call it large language model, you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. As long as you document it, explain what you're doing, and demonstrate that it's a closed system. You can call it what you want. Right now, everyone's calling it .ai or whatever.
Exactly.
So for our broader listeners, that's what I would say. The take home from this is really, yeah, definitely. There are tools out there for sure. They come at a very high price, at a huge element of lift around validating those systems, as well as making sure that they're fit for purpose in particular settings, whatever that might be. And that's what you're speaking to, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's going to be a few more years until people really understand that it might be good to use a system that is small, tailored to an individual task, and employ those. There is going to be a problem of too many tools and then losing the oversight there, which will have to be addressed. But at the moment, it's just the gold rush that I think is a problem. And I understand that. If you go in, you slap AI on, I don't know, your pitch deck, and then you have an investor coming in that gives you 50 million euros, unless you completely 10x every year, it's not sustainable. This is already ingrained in the amount of money that they gave you. So you have to charge these prices as well. But this means your target audience is not your day-to-day, everyday CRO, smaller boutique CROs, mid-sized ones even, because you can simply hire a couple of people to do the same job. And the clientele that we mostly work with is not willing to pay for 1 or 2 weeks faster, maybe, if promises hold up, in individual task and analysis here or there, that premium. You cannot forward those costs, which at the end of the day means you don't gain a meaningful advantage. This is where I see it at the moment, but I'm also certain that will change over time. We will find better means, better solutions. At the moment, the brute force makes it so expensive. Once we are more tailored solutions that are more strategically placed, the costs for involving the AIs will go down, and that will also reduce the prices. And I think then we are in a much better position to really meaningfully employ them. But this is not what people are running after. They are running after big valuations, and that means big promises, and that comes with big prices.
Thank you, Andreas. That's helpful. Is there anything that we haven't talked about today that we should have done?
Oh, we touched a lot of nice topics, and there's so much to discuss. Maybe this is just a statement. It's maybe not so much a discussion. I am very hopeful. What I currently see, despite all of the struggles, we have changing regulations, especially in Europe, or we had a lot of changes in it that brought with it a lot of uncertainty. Economically, there's been a lot of turmoil. I'm sure for the next at least 2 years and 3 months, it will also continue before we have some leadership change and maybe impactful countries on this globe. It's 2 years and 6 months, actually. Let's see. Despite all of that, what I've seen, especially this year, but also in the second half of last year, was quite a lot more hope, a lot more certainty, a lot of positive news as well, and moving in the right direction. Yes, there's a lot of uncertainty. Yes, we talk a lot about AI taking away our jobs and how will the future look like. It will not get certain from here, more and more certain, at least for a significant period of time, if ever. So it's something we have to get used to a little bit. That pushes us outside of our comfort zone. It means we need to be more adaptable. It means that we are faced with change more so than we may like on a day-to-day. That awards opportunities, but it also brings challenges with it. But everything that I'm seeing, the human factor of our industry, the connections that we can have, and the willingness to support one another, and the unbroken spirit of innovation and advancement, despite all of those hurdles, is still there. That gives me a lot of hope. And if there is a positive message, that I think we sometimes share too few positive messages. So if anything, that's a positive message I think we should share.
Thank you, Andreas. I think that's very positive, and that takes us nicely into the quickfire round. I wonder, what is the one piece of advice based upon all of the things that we've talked about today? What is the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
I thought a little bit about this, occasionally do, especially in reflection also of my own podcast. And I think one of the elements that got me here was saying a lot of yes to a lot of things, despite being uncomfortable with them. I would continue doing that, but I will say there comes a moment in which you need to reflect which opportunities to say yes to and which not to, because there's going to be a strain. At the beginning, you have limited opportunities, so saying yes to as many of them as possible is great. This will be beneficial for you, even if it comes at the strain, but you can also survive that period a little bit better as you're younger, and it will push you forward more in your career. If this is what you're choosing, what is important for you. There comes a point when you need to realize that's not sustainable, and where there is a growth in the number of opportunities that you get, where you then need to reflect whether or not to take certain ones of them. My advice to my younger self would be say yes a lot, but be mindful that there comes a moment where that should not be your number one strategy.
Thank you. That's beautifully explained. What are the top 3 qualities you value most when building a team?
And number 1 is definitely enthusiasm. I just need people that are high-spirited. I think that goes aligned with probably number 2 is optimism. I need someone that believes that despite hurdles, there can be a solution. I think if you're too pessimistic, sometimes you will just not start, and that's the most important piece. Then the third is probably having people without an ego that prevents them from accepting feedback and reflecting on themselves. So because that will allow them to grow. So if the ego is in the way of getting that feedback, really internalizing it and changing your behavior, that's not going to work.
I don't need to say anything. You said it all. What is your favorite thing outside of work, Andreas?
That's a good question. I would say at the moment it's board games. I really started enjoying, now that we've built a house a year and a half ago. Now this year has been quite in the spirit of maintaining our garden. So this has been quite meditative for me as well, because it's just quite different and you can actually see the progression. But I have a lot of passion for board games. I have founders, startup CEO group also, and that plays board games on a weekly basis. A lot of nice competitive people, really cool. That's a lot of fun and enjoyment, and it also really gets me out of my day to day. So if I would say number one thing that I wouldn't want to miss, it would probably be board gaming, because that's a great release and like mindset shift for me. Still quite strategic. I love that, but nevertheless, something that truly gives me a lot of joy.
Thank you. Finally, what is your number one golden rule in life and in business?
Ooh. I would say, I don't exactly know how to phrase it, but I would say always look on the bright side. It feels a little bit too cliche as a statement, but that's it. I think one of the things that most impacts me in life and translates very well into business as well is that I'm an extremely positive person. There's probably 2 half days or maybe 2 days a year in which I'm in a bad mood, but the rest of the time, I have an opportunity to really focus on all of the good things that are also happening, on the opportunities in the challenges that we are facing. If you see that, the life that you can lead can be so beautiful, and there are so many small things that can give you pleasure and joy, which are often drowned out in negativities and things that you struggle with and that you think about and that take up a lot of your space, that it's very easy to not be grateful for the life that we are awarded to live. Positivity for life and in business for me is something that should always take precedent.
Thank you, Andreas. You've given us such a rich insight into yourself, your leadership style, the principles with which you clearly lead the organization that you've been chosen to lead ahead. I've just got a couple of phrases ringing in my ears, which I've highlighted on my notes. You listen first. You're all about learning, and you're not being swept along by the AI gold rush. I think those three things that I've taken away from this conversation perhaps encapsulate you, but also just the positivity that you've ended on, always looking on the bright side of life, reminding me of the Monty Python song, which I don't know whether you're familiar with, but that's a lovely way to tie the conversation together from the beginning to the end. Once again, it's just been an absolute delight to speak to you. You haven't disappointed me. I didn't expect that you would. You've exceeded all my expectations, and really want to just thank you for being on Pharma Prescribed today, Andreas. It's been just a delight and a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for entertaining me and for your thoughtful questions. I really appreciate it. It has been a blast again. Happy to have returned. Yeah, thank you for giving me space to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Andreas.